Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and today we're going to have a look at the Christmas forecast with the forecast for beyond Christmas as well. Now it's looking up very interesting for Christmas and beyond. We initially thought that we're going to have some quite cold weather over Christmas, and we still are. However, that's kind of downgraded over the last week or so, just to being reasonably cool or cold, but no wintry potential really. But after that, it's still quite uncertain. We're in a kind of setup with the atmosphere where it wants to build high pressure to our west and to our north. It keeps trying to do it. It's failing, and it's starting to succeed in the medium future. When it does succeed, I do expect there to be some quite cold conditions and potentially wintry conditions, and that's what we're starting to see in the model output for beyond Christmas. But I'll confirm that through this video, and you can see what's sort of happening with the models. We're on with the GFS at the moment, just to show you generally what the pressure patterns are looking like. So we have quite a westerly sort of flow at the moment, with low pressure to our north and also coming in from the Atlantic. It's going to be quite mild, very mild on Monday, but quite wet and windy. However, you see this high pressure out in the Atlantic, and this is sort of the thing we're seeing with the amplification of the jet stream. We're seeing these cold air from the north come digging behind this air of low pressure that moves through on Wednesday. So by Christmas Eve, we're in quite cool or even cold air. We could be seeing some wintry showers as well with that. And if you have a look at the upper air temperatures, see quite cold, -5, getting down to -6, -7 potentially. So some wintry showers with that, but high pressure is toppling in, so it does look like it will sort of fizzle out. Come Christmas morning, we'll have a look at this. More specifically towards the end of the video, but the high pressure topples over and we start to see cold and crisp conditions for Christmas Day. So reasonably cold, maybe 4, 5, 6 degrees in the day, with a frost in the morning. So not a white Christmas, but in frost terms, there will be probably some frost around. You can see a lot of high pressure in the Atlantic, and it is heading towards Greenland. And this is something we've been seeing on the model runs quite frequently now, with this area of low pressure coming out of Greenland, high pressure replacing it towards Greenland, and this low pressure plunging southwards, bringing quite cold air with it, and quite significant area of low pressure with a lot of rain, showers, and strong winds with that. You'd expect it to be quite cold. However, on the upper airs with this current GFS one, it's not particularly cold. A lot of the colder airs is kept to our north and further north of Scotland towards Iceland. It's frustrating as this sort of pattern could give substantial amounts of snowfall, with a lot of shower activity around it. But there is still some cold air there, and again, this is quite far out, and a degree or so can be the difference between heavy rain and heavy snow. So we've got to keep an eye on that. But it's looking like it's going to be turning colder, maybe substantially colder, depending on what really happens with the upper airs. And I'll show you with the GFS ensembles in a minute, which are trending this -5 line to be further through the country than this current GFS operational run. If we look at the pressure patterns, you can see this high pressure remains around Greenland in the mid-Atlantic. We continue to pull a north to northeasterly wind. Cold air does start to dig in as well, which creates even colder. You can see the high pressure remains out of the Atlantic and trends towards Canada and Greenland, and we keep these cold north to northeasterly winds. And another area of low pressure plunges down, that moves into colder air, so again, there could be some big snowfall with that. And the high pressure remains to our north, and we start to pull in a bitterly cold northeasterly wind with the -10 moving in, and that just needs to be subtly different, and that very cold air is over the top of the country. So by the end, we're in some very, very cold conditions. We'll now have a look at the GFS for Christmas Day. So you can see this is the pressure pattern, this area of low pressure moving through on Christmas Eve, bringing quite heavy rain to the south, but colder air is digging in behind it, so that's all going to be rain really. But as this cold air floods in from the north, we could be seeing some wintry showers, and if we have a look at precipitation type, you can see potential for some snowfall to start to move in across northern Scotland. You'd start to see potentially some snow towards Christmas Day, again, only really in the north. And if you have a look at the precipitation type, this is for Christmas Day, remember, you can see there's some showers across the east coast, which could could, and I mean could, be wintry, but again, it's too early to say what's going to come of that. If we look at the dew points, you can see very low dew points, so or at least below freezing dew points, so an overnight frost is likely. And if you look at the temperatures, it's quite cold, and come daytime, it's really only getting up to about 3-4 degrees. Um, Maybe a little bit higher depending on how much sunshine we get before getting colder again, before milder air sweeps down. So it's looking like a reasonably seasonable, cold, crisp Christmas with the chance of a few showers around, but nothing substantial really for Christmas. However, Boxing Day, it's looking more like a band of rain will be moving in from the north with weather fronts, which is most likely to be rain, but potentially some snow over higher ground. But again, that's not really abnormal for this time of year. If we have a look at the GEM model, it shows similar patterns to GFS, but we just want to be interested in what happens in the longer term. As you see this, high pressure topples in, Christmas Day, very similar pattern, that high pressure builds towards Greenland, and we start to pull down northerly winds. It's going quite cold there on the GM as the area of low pressure is further to our east, so it pulls more of that cold air that we initially was in the Atlantic on the GFS run further towards the UK. However, the ridge doesn't get as high north, so it doesn't look like this is going to be as long lasting as the GFS. However, with the substantial amount of blocking in the Atlantic towards Greenland, I expect this area of low pressure, if we could run this on further, to plunge southwards again, bringing very cold air within that towards the UK after this brief mild sector. So again, even though it doesn't follow the GFS, it still shows the general pattern of quite cold northwesterly airflows. If we have a look at the ECMWF, which is considered the most reliable model, really, and you can see it is now following what the other models are looking with this plunging air of low pressure, bringing very cold northerly winds, and it does follow suit with the GM, where it does pull away and does pull down quite bitter cold air from the north. You can see with that northerly airflow, so that would be turning widely showers to snow and wintry precipitation. So that's not as long lasting as the GFS, but I'd expect this high pressure to build back in further north. And we'll have a look at the ECMWF ensembles in a minute after we look at the GFS. We'll have a look at the GFS ensembles for London here. As you can see, quite a mild air mass at the moment, but we go very colder for Christmas, so -6, -7. So anything falling out the sky would be falling wintry with that. But again, as we're under high pressure, it's quite unlikely anything is going to be falling out the sky, really, apart from maybe some coastal areas. We get a brief uptick as low pressure moves in, but as that low pressure sweeps through, we will go pretty cold, with the average floating around the -5 line, which is pretty much one of the parameters for air mass for snow. So it's looking quite cold for the foreseeable future, and even if you go towards the 5th of January, the average is still -3.9 in London. But again, many ensemble members are below that, -6, -7 degrees, even getting towards -8. No bitterly cold conditions, so nothing really where you'd like Beast for Beast or December to Remember sort of levels. But again, it's cold enough for snow potentially with this current run. But again, it's too early to tell. This could easily flip to milder conditions again. If we have a look at the dew points, you can see the dew points are around freezing for the foreseeable future. So anything falling at the sky with the right air conditions, with the right air mass, could be falling as wintry precipitation. Dew points ticked off, air mass is ticked off. Precipitation is what we need. But if you have a look here, precipitation is not particularly high, so it's looking more showery conditions. But again, it's too early to tell. If we have a look at the snow image, you can see there is quite a few ensemble members showing some snow. A little bit of snow around Christmas Eve into Christmas Day, which it may be a small area of showers that the ensemble members are looking at. But again, too early really to tell at the moment whether that's going to come of anything, as there's not really strong signals of that. It's more likely to be a showery condition, so we'll have to look at that to nearer the time. Beyond that, there could be some quite significant areas of snow around, maybe. But again, it's a good week, 10 days away from these colder conditions setting in. we can't really put the details down. All we know at the moment is it's probably very likely that it's going to be colder than average, potentially colder for snow, most likely in the north and over hills, but further south and over lowland areas, it's still looking quite likely we'll see some snow conductive air around. The last thing we'll have a look at is on the Icelandic Met Office, which is showing the pressure charts, but the ensembles. So, as you can see here, we've got the three scenarios for uh, that's Christmas Eve, that's the 23rd, in 84 hours time from the midnight run. You can see high pressure out in the Atlantic. It just shows you snapshots of what each ensemble member's going for, and it sort of collects them together. So if we run through these, you can see um, that if you go towards Christmas Day, very similar conditions, slight alterations on them with where the high pressure is positioned, but all generally showing the same pattern. As we move through, you can start to see that area of low pressure plunging southwards, and you can see 33% of ensemble members and this 29% of ensemble members here. So that's over 60% both showing this plunging area of low pressure. 25% showing low pressure swing further north, so northwesterly winds, still reasonably cold, but not as likely as cold. And then this area of low pressure plunging further eastwards, so again going quite cold, but more settled. So all showing a very similar pattern, which is encouraging for 8 days' time. If you look out beyond that, continued area of low pressure out to our east, all showing this general pattern of high pressure in the Atlantic, and to our north, low pressure to our east, south, and our northeast, just changing slight orientation. So northwesterly winds there, northerly winds there, northerly air flow there, but more stagnant as we're towards the centre of the low pressure, so potentially a bit milder, even though it's quite going to be quite cold. And then this one here would be putting in more of an easterly wind, but again, it's too difficult to tell exactly what's coming up that, as there's not these areas of high pressure and low pressure, not as big. If we go beyond that, so this is New Year's Day, see big blocking areas of high pressure, so just really the orientation, all are looking reasonably cold. Just how cold we don't really know at the moment. And as we head towards into the new year, see a lot of northern blocking. This one here would be pulling down some northerly winds. Again, can't really tell how cold that will be. That's 31% of ensemble members, 27.5%. Going for a similar pattern, we're going to see after Christmas with low pressure to our east, high pressure out to our west, northerly winds. 23.5% going for northeasterly winds. That would probably the coldest member and potentially most wintry, with low pressure to our south, big area blocking high to our north, and air coming from Scandinavia. Usually with these northerly airflows, it's coming across the North Sea and the ocean, which is always going to be more higher than freezing. So it's always going to warm up the air. The quickest way to get cold air to the country is through Scandinavia and through Europe. So that ensemble members here that are showing these northeasterly winds will likely, even though potentially wouldn't have the coldest air mass, would most likely produce the coldest conditions. Now again, the last ensemble members pulling in easterly winds, but it's looking much more settled, so much drier and probably quite cold as well. So looking foreseeably cold, the foreseeable future is looking quite cold, in both the GFS and the ECMWF ensembles. So it's going to be a very interesting period we're looking up, and I haven't highlighted it today, I just don't want to make the video too long, but there's also a chance of a major sudden stratospheric warming coming up in the first week of January, which the GFS and some of the ensembles are looking at the moment. So we could be in, I'm not going to call it as a very wintry end of middle part of winter, but we could, and I mean could, be looking at quite a cold end of December and first half of January. And if that sudden stratospheric warming comes off, we could be looking at a very cold January in general. If that sudden stratospheric warming would come down the atmosphere within 2 or 3 weeks, so by the end of January, we'd probably see the conditions from that. And it might not be a beast in the east, but it will probably produce some blocking, combined with the blocking we've got at the moment, could produce some substantially cold conditions. So it's just something we need to keep an eye on. And keep monitoring it, as we could be looking up probably our most coldest and maybe most wintry spell for many years, at least since the Beast from the East, and even before the Beast from the East, maybe like 2013. For longevity, so with the current ensemble members, it's looking like this could be at least a week, 2 weeks long worth of blocking conditions and colder weather. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another update soon on these weather conditions.